Hello and welcome to this morning's CEDIA Expo virtual keynote entitled State of the Industry, COVID-19's Effects in 2020 and Beyond. Today's keynote is sponsored by Savant and Access Networks. So thank you to both Savant and Access Networks. A big thank you for sponsoring this morning's keynote conversation. My name is Jason Knott, editor of CE Pro, and I'm honored to be moderating this panel with several insightful leaders of the industry. Today we're going to have a wide-ranging discussion. We're going to talk about a lot of topics that are hitting the industry right now in this most unique time that we're all faced with. Some of the key categories that are seeing growth in this time period, which is, I think nobody could have predicted, but it's happening. Wellness, lighting fixtures, home theater, outdoor entertainment, home office networks, all on a strong growth trajectory. Job logistics have changed. How is that affecting labor profitability in the advent of COVID-19? The state of the supply chain. We saw some shortages from various manufacturers in the spring and the summer. Is that a short-term isolated situation, or are we going to see that continue going on? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then general conversation about how integrators are engaging with their customers during this COVID-19 crisis. So with me today are Hagai Feiner, founder and CEO of Access Networks. Hi, Hagai.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Also with me, Bill Lacey. Bill is president and CEO of GE Lighting. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Jason. How are you? It's a pleasure to be with you fellas this evening.
Thanks for being here. And then last but not least, JC Murphy, president of Savant. Hi, JC.
Jason, great seeing you.
Okay, so before we get started into the conversation, just for everybody who's in attendance, when you come to a session like this, or all these sessions at CEDIA Virtual Expo, you get so much information that you feel like your head's going to explode. What I like to recommend is focus just today on our conversation on what are 1, 2, or 3 things that you see as potential takeaways for your business that you could have an immediate impact on? Don't try and go beyond that. What are the 3 real strong takeaways from this conversation that you can go back to your team, go back to your clients, go back to your suppliers with? And I think I guarantee you'll find something out of this session that you can have some immediate action on as you look forward to the remainder of 2020 and you start budgeting for 2021. So, okay, are we ready, guys? Let's do this. All right. So many integrators I mentioned have had particular jumps in business in certain categories, home networks, wellness, lighting. But how has the pandemic changed the industry permanently? I think back to when we didn't have to go through metal detectors to get on airplanes, and now that's a permanent part of our society. Are masks going to be a permanent element of this industry on the job site? What are some of the permanent changes that are coming out of this, both in the short term and the long term? Hagai, let me start with you on that.
I believe that the primary change in the marketplace is homeowner perception of what we do and where the integrator fits into the project. A lot of things haven't changed. So construction is still the same. If you look at framing, if you look at mechanical, electrical, plumbing, but technology and the perception of the homeowner of the importance of the technology that's going into their house, I believe is forever changed. And when I say forever, it's probably in our lifetime, meaning the people that will remember the pandemic and what their home systems meant for them during this period will likely want to continue and invest in those systems, especially when it comes to connectivity, entertainment, and anything that is relating to being able to work and stay connected remotely. And so I'm in a process of building a home in Santa Monica now. I can tell you that the primary focus that we've had was, of course, the network, somewhat naturally, but also lighting and music and video. We want to make sure that all of our sources are there. We want to make sure that we can stream and the kids are doing their thing and no one's interrupted, and really planning on staying home for an unknown amount of time. And so homeowner perception, I would say, is the biggest driver that we have for business at Access Networks, and that's also something we see with the integrators.
JC, what do you think is permanently entrenched in this industry out of the pandemic?
I think the big thing here is it's a human nature element, which is folks felt very out of control, that they, all of a sudden the pandemic hit, they were forced into their home, and then it was like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? And now, moving through this pandemic, there's an opportunity for folks to kind of take control of their home environment from a bunch of different aspects. And I think that just like if you can give somebody more certainty about what's going to happen tomorrow, that makes them feel better. And I think homeowners and business owners now are looking, saying, boy, never expected to live through a pandemic. It could happen again, and this is going to continue. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to take control over my living environment.
And boy, don't we need control right now, because it seems like so many other things are out of control, from wildfires to civil unrest to whatever. But that leads me to another question, JC. Let me stick with you on this. And Hagai kind of brought it up, that it seems as though consumers are more invested in their systems than ever. I know I saw some data from Sonos during the initial outset of the pandemic and the lockdowns that showed 40% increase in listening hours through Sonos systems. I saw some data from Dish that showed a 50% jump in news and entertainment watching channels amongst their viewership. So how are people more invested in their systems than ever?
Yeah, well, what we can see, one of the features that's in a home with Savant control through a great network like Hagai's, we can actually, from a security perspective, we can see the number of users that a administrator puts into that home environment: guest users, family members, admin users. And what we see is that we've seen about a 27% increase in the number of users that people have put into the existing systems. That's in addition to all the new users that are coming on board through new installs. But in the core user base, even more and more folks are being added to the existing systems. And I reflect back just on my own home experience of having 2 college kids back with me, and then their associated other folks that are coming into the home in this close-knit network and adding those users into the environment.
Yeah, it certainly seems so. And, Hagai, let me turn back to you, something you brought up that I think is an interesting point. And it's something I've been kind of contemplating too, is, when the recession hit, a dozen years ago, or however long ago it was now, we saw a big change in terms at the high end of the market, where the luxury client did not want to be ostentatious. They did not, that there was a lot of purchasing that stopped at the high end of the market. But the pandemic has obviously affected the economy negatively, but it seems to be different than the recession. I don't really seem to see that same level of reticence happening at the luxury end of the market. Just in general, what are your perceptions on how this situation is different from the Great Recession?
Well, 2008 was a rough year. And for a good reason, right? So we had the mortgage lending crisis, countrywide went out of business, people lost their homes, signed all kinds of deals for irresponsible mortgages that then they ended up defaulting on. That was a different reason than what's happening today, and also had a different end result that impacted the market in a different way. Where what you see now is kind of a flip reaction, where instead of people being forced out of their homes because they're defaulting on their mortgages, people are staying in their homes. People are buying a second home now because they can't travel. And so in a lot of ways, the budgets that we used to apply to, for example, family trips, or, travel anywhere as part of the business, or whatever we used to do before the pandemic that has ceased, those budgets are now being refunneled to largely our industry, investing in the home systems, because of course we're all confined to our home. And so the impact on the economy is very different. and where you see industries like live events or restaurants, or you name it, all the bars, everything is shut down. Those funds that usually would be funneled to those causes now are being funneled elsewhere, to a degree, also into our industry. And so very different issues today versus what we had in 2008, and of course a very different end result.
So do you think integrators are right to be very conservative right now? I think a lot of them are maybe going a little bit, baby steps, thinking about that. I think that recession has really got people thinking about what might happen, but maybe they should be conservative right now.
So being conservative in my mind is always a good thing, but you don't want to be so conservative to a point where it is completely halting your business. And so the magic period between being conservative and being bullish with your business is finding kind of the middle ground and being able to continue and function, continue and talk to your clients, understand what they need, go and give them the service that they're looking for, but at the same time realize that, of course, none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we are, to a degree, operating in an economy that's fueled by stimulus money, both to small business and individuals. But in my view, the clients that we cater to, that our industry caters to, they have not been affected negatively as far as our industry sees it, simply because budgets that were used to going to trips to France in the summer or taking a jet somewhere are now going into investing in home systems and integration and construction completion, again, because your home is your fortress in these turbulent times.
Yeah, I think I saw a statistic that the travel and tourism industry in the United States is $750 billion a year. And again, some of that money is still being spent and a lot of it is being transferred into other areas, but a lot of that money, I gotta believe, is being transferred into the home, because that's where your travel and tourism is taking place, from the living room to the dining room, I guess. All right, one last area I want to touch on before we get into some of the product categories. And JC, I want to talk to you about this. Is, so many integrators are solo entrepreneurs. A lot of them are even the larger companies are really built sometimes around a cult of personality of the leader of that company. And they, as such, are great at engaging with their customer base, that the way that they can face-to-face meet with them and talk about technology on a personal level. And right now, of course, that's a difficult thing for them to do. And again, I'll back up a little bit. A lot of integrators have had customer bases for many, many years, but maybe not had very organized customer relationship management software systems or ways to outreach back to their existing clientele effectively. What advice can you give to an integrator right now about how he should be engaging with his customers and being customer centric?
Yeah, well, I don't want to, they're running great small businesses, and I think the vast majority of integrators are doing the right stuff. So, but what I see happening that's such a positive from a large portion of the customer base right now is they are doubling down on the engagement and finding different ways to engage, not only at a personal level, but kind of at a professional level. And the clients, while still demanding, are much more receptive to learning about new things. So if you think about it in an acronym of 4 E's. So this engagement is critical, and not backing away from the engagement just because it's not in person. There's lots of ways to kind of engage now online via Zoom. I just went to a hosted Zoom wine tasting. It was great. Never thought I'd do that, right? But it's also an opportunity for them to expand. So when I say expand, it's basically expand beyond something that they wouldn't normally do. So a couple examples from integrators where they basically, with the restaurants in certain parts of the country, cutting down completely in what they could do in terms of dine-in facilities. Integrators have a core competency, right, to bring audio and video expertise to a restaurant or a bar that needed to move everything outside. So basically in their hometown, engaging with the restaurants that were struggling, teaching them how to basically, with the equipment that they had, expand the audio and video experience outside, from inside the restaurant to outside the restaurant. Awesome. You know, integrators expanding themselves professionally, reaching out to other small businesses that are in the area. And we had an example of somebody doing that with a car dealership. Basically, you know, turn the inside of the car dealership into an outside showroom, right? So awesome. The other thing is that there's a lot of opportunity to explain now the technology and the system that was deployed maybe 4 or 5 months ago or a year ago. And to your point, Jason, about the opportunity to kind of go back and reach into the existing customer base and explain a lot of the capabilities that is in that system that might not have been used in a very professional way. And you know, I think those are the big ones that stand out for me.
That's interesting. I'll just throw in another anecdote. You talk about the customers maybe understanding what the situation is. And I've heard from at least one integrator I talked to a few weeks ago who was expressing how impatient a lot of his customers are because they're home all the time. They're stuck. They're, you know, something's not working. And he looked at it, you know, looking at the glass half full kind of perspective, that I should have gotten service agreements with these customers, because he was out there servicing those clientele who had become very demanding, didn't want to wait, you know, 24 hours to be serviced. So again, trying to find that opportunity in there. All right, let's talk about some of the product trends that are facing the market. And first and foremost, we see this lighting fixture, lighting and wellness trend really hitting the industry like gangbusters. So Bill, obviously GE Lighting is a big entity dealing at the consumer level. Tell us a little bit about what trends are happening in the consumer lighting space right now that can possibly help integrators.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for the question. You know, what we're seeing during this pandemic is that houses were underlit. And as a result of rooms becoming multifunctional, people realized that having one mode of lighting in, let's say, their dining room, where maybe they only sat during Thanksgiving, now it's becoming the classroom for one of the college students, or the place where one of the individuals are working from. They're realizing that they don't have enough light to make that a great experience. So we have actually seen during this pandemic period in the consumer space a lot of lift of people buying lights as they were out at the grocery store. They're making special trips to the DIY centers in order to improve what they're now having to do in their home. Matter of fact, we just came out with a new slogan during this period called "Light the Way You Live," and that is, again, bringing into this concept that at home you're not just living there, you're working there. Hagai mentioned it. You're going to play there, and that, believe it or not, can be impacted by good old-fashioned lighting. And so we've really seen lighting and the importance and the recognition of it elevate. And there's a ton of fun things to do with lighting today as you get into the spectrum aspect of lighting. Before, lighting was about on-off, dimming, putting foot candles on a table. And with when you're dealing with the spectrum of it, you're dealing with color temperature. So again, if you're in your kid's bedroom, which was a place where maybe he or she slept, but now it's become their schoolroom. And so if you have the ability to adjust that color temperature from a warm, soothing, which is appropriate for bedtime, and you have the ability to control it to take it to a cool, which science says has the ability to make you more alert and put you in a better frame of mind to study. Well, that tunable white, which was a bit of a party trick all of a sudden becomes relevant and necessary. And so that is what we're seeing the consumers do. Play, gamers. Now all this color lights that, again, when you had somebody new come over and you show them this little party trick of changing the light colors. Well, now your home, you're investing in a decent gaming system, and you have the ability to align that lighting with the game. So you're starting to see more of that come into relevance. And so I think it's an exciting time to be in lighting. You're starting to see people growing their own gardens. They're growing a lot of different products, from tomatoes to cannabis, depending on what state you live in. And so we have come out with a new line of horticulture lights, and we're seeing that business go extremely strong. So I think you're going to see some of this. In the CEDIA channels, you've already seen some of this, but I also think there's other things that are starting to trend that will be a great opportunity for your channel. And we're also starting to see things that in your channel that was viewed as luxury, that was viewed as, again, something that you didn't need, is now becoming more relevant and more of a requirement if you're going to have to work at home, if you're going to have to go to school at home, and if you're going to play a lot more at home. So, Jason, that's sort of some of the things that we're seeing. And like I said, it's an exciting time. And I really don't think it's a blip. I don't think folks are ever going back to the office the way they have pre-COVID. And so I think that this has staying power and something that should be paid attention to.
Let me ask a follow-up to you and JC. I'll let you chime in on this too. I've always been curious as to what's the dynamic in lighting between the smart bulb and the lighting control and now the intelligent fixture or the fixture. Is the smart bulb really just kind of that gateway drug to get people interested in some of the parlor tricks you mentioned, Bill, that's going to build them into a more lighting control? Or is that a viable entry point for people to just go out and start buying smart bulbs and not really have lighting control or intelligent fixtures or low voltage LEDs or anything like that in their home? And I know Savant had, I don't know, you might still have a smart bulb. What is that? Is it a good, better, best scenario, or is the smart bulb really something that's at the consumer level and not really something that the integrators should worry about? JC, I'll let you take that first.
Yeah, no, Jason, it's an excellent question. I think the whole idea here is really to be effective and across all sizes of homes, right? You need really something that's end to end because of the uniqueness and dynamic nature of the types of fixtures that are in a living environment. You want something that can scale up and down the spectrum. So from the highly reliable color tuning capability that's in the GE smart light bulb, all the way up to really high-end, super expensive $800 fixtures. The fact that you can have that as part of your entire arsenal is really important in delivering that solution in all types of homes and all sizes of homes. That's point one. The second thing is, as the technologies advance, the connection between what you have at the controller side of it, which Savant and others had classically done, all the way to the driver that's actually in the fixture is really important and relevant as we really push the envelope in terms of tunable white light and then DMX controlled lighting as well. And it's that kind of connection and that ecosystem that works together that's becoming increasingly important to get that high quality light throughout the home and throughout all the different types of fixtures that are in the home. One other thing that Bill mentioned that's super exciting for the CI channel is really, if you think about what we saw at last CEDIA with biophilia and basically wellness in the home. And now not only can we do that in terms of tunable light, but we also can do that in terms of living walls in homes from a horticulture perspective. And if you think about the whole concept of farm to table, and what we went back to this first point we made about taking control of your own destiny, that being able to actually grow your own food efficiently in some of these homes is going to be another big trend, I think, for the custom integrator to take advantage of.
Yeah, so Bill, from your standpoint at GE, had you seen momentum at the smart bulb level, or had it really just been kind of a gadget device that some homeowners were playing with?
Yeah, I still think, Jason, we're on the verge of mass adoption for connected. You have seen the first movers playing in this connected space for probably 5 years. And we're just hitting that price point, and I think in another year or less, where, like I said, you're going to start seeing this thing mass adopt. The way we look at it, today, there's 5 billion sockets in the U.S. In homes. And those sockets are going to be primarily an Edison socket, if you will, where you have a bulb. But I think the CEDIA channel, the homes that we're seeing there, is showing us where it's going to go, which is, as new homes are being built, you're not going to have an Edison socket put into that ceiling. It is going to be an integrated fixture. Now, the good news for us is that we're gonna do and play in both. But the other thing is, there are 5 billion Edison sockets out there, and unless you're going to do a major renovation of your home, you're not likely to rip that out and put in integrated fixtures. So bulbs are going to be around for a while. I think it's going to get to a point where every bulb is just a connected bulb. It just has that ability. Whether you decide to turn it on or not will be up to you. So I think the connected bulb it has a role to play. And like I said, people are starting to see and have context of why tunable white, why full color is more than just something cool, but there's real application and real reason to have that. People want flexibility. I think of control and flexibility in the same way, and it doesn't cost you a ton more to get that. And so I think you're going to see bulbs again, be connected bulbs, be a major product out there in the consumer space. But you guys have shown the way, which is it's going to be integrated fixtures as we continue to into the future.
Now, Hagai, you're going through this right now with your house in Santa Monica, right?
Right. Yeah, we actually had the integrator walk in after the entire construction contract, including lighting and electrical, was signed, and literally take that away from the electrician. Caused a lot of friction, because the integrator is best suited to go, of course, integrate this, and it's low voltage, and it's not even inspected by the inspector. And now we have tunable lighting, we have complete control. It's everything that we wanted, but didn't know we could have. And I think an integrator right now that is not selling lighting is the same as an integrator that didn't sell shades, 10 years ago. It's that next big category that turns into a huge part of the project that you are effectively swiping over from the electrician. There's a lot of money to be made in it. It's one of the biggest line items, if not the biggest one on our proposal, is lighting, because it's, whole house and, garage and ADU in the back, outdoor. So it spills into a complete lifestyle solution, right? You interview the client based on what they want. And who doesn't want tunable lighting? Once you see it, and I was blessed enough to see it at the Ketra or the Delos office here in LA, see the Ketra solution, it blew my mind away. First time seeing tunable lighting that way was a very different experience than, experimenting with my Philips Hue kit that was kind of useless. When you see the actual application and how it changes the mood in the room like that, there's no going back. It's kind of like listening to a really nice audio system. Once you go into Shelly's stereo here in LA and you sit down and they play some tracks, it's really hard to go back to your headphones and think that you're having a good listening experience. So that's our job, to deliver those experiences and create those memories where clients don't want to go back to the old stuff that they used to have.
So you touched on it, and JC, you touched on it. I want to just circle back on the wellness element and human-centric lighting element of this. So it sounds like lighting, it's really a key business element, and it gets the integrator in earlier on the project. It gets them doing the lighting schematics. Maybe in some cases they become the lighting designer on the project. So has lighting elevated beyond the point where you need the wellness and the human-centric part of it is the driving factor, or is that still an important conversation to have with the customer? JC?
Yeah, I think we still have to start with the fundamentals, and Bill has a great statistic out there in terms of the sockets that are available. But there are so many home builders in the mid to high end marketplace right now that are still doing nothing with control. So it's not even the integrator themselves. It's actually the builders that still need this round of education from the industry, CEDIA, from the integrator community, and from the suppliers. And the example that we're using internally, it's that there's going to be this inflection point where my children, right, never bought a vehicle that didn't have automatic windows, right? But you can't buy a new vehicle that doesn't have automatic windows. There was a price point that all of a sudden that was in every new vehicle coming out, right? You hit a button, the windows rolled up. There's an inflection point here where all home builders are going to have to build new homes with tunable white light and colored light and lighting control, right? Because the home builders competition is not the other new home builders. The home builders competition is actually the inventory of existing homes that's out there for that new home sale. But it's a conversation like this amongst four guys on the phone or on the Zoom call here, but it's really, that's the education that needs to happen actually in the home builder community for that light to go on.
That's interesting. I love that analogy. All right, let's talk about supply chain. I mentioned up top, we were going to talk a little bit about that. And I heard from a lot of integrators who in the spring and summer were having trouble with televisions, receivers, networking gear. So has that weakness, did the pandemic expose a weakness in the supply chain for the custom installation space? And has that weakness been resolved, or is it still out there and we might see some shortages going forth? Bill, obviously you deal with products at a high level volume. What do you see?
Yeah, for our supply chain, and again, about 90% of all of our products we source from China. And so this was a potential major issue for us. And what you saw in the beginning was when COVID happened, it hit right after Chinese New Year. So China was already out for a couple of weeks. And that was both good and bad. It was good because typically you built up a bunch of inventory knowing that they were going into Chinese New Year's. The problem was when you bled that down, folks weren't back in the factory to start refilling the inventory. So that was the initial issue. And that bubble hit people at different times depending on how much inventory they had in place. And so what you're seeing is that that initial issue from the China factories not being open, that was the initial thing that hit us. And I think for the most part, you've seen that not be a problem anymore. Folks are back in the factories, whether it was in China or really as it was related to the pandemic, that was global. You had factories down. We don't see that anymore. Factories are back up at 100% capacity. The issue is they all got back up to capacity around the same time. And so that means all the products started flooding back into the US around the same time. And now when you go to the West Coast to try to get product through the dock, it is impossible. there's a lack of containers. There's a lack of trucks to drag those containers around. And then once you get it to a distribution center, there's a lack of trucks to come to pick it up. And so the entire retail channel right now, regardless of the products, are just having a heck of a time right now because there's so much congestion at the ports. And so I think that that's going to be with us. There's a ton of a point of view of when that'll come out. I think you got to be thinking 2021, beginning of 2021, end of the year before you see the congestion at the ports clear up. So I think we've learned a ton. We've found different routes outside of the West Coast. You got to be careful though, because some of these other routes are very expensive. Air freight has been interesting with the pandemic. That also has been, again, a plus and a minus. And then in terms of other realities is, as it relates to China specifically, because of the pandemic and just because of the amount of product that comes there, we have gone on a journey of sort of diversifying our supply chain because of this issue, because of tariffs. And so we really want to make sure that we have a diversified supply chain, and that's the work that we're doing for multiple reasons. You really need to not have your eggs all in one basket, as we learned when we were very young, at a very young age. That is holding true for how you ought to think about your supply chain.
Very interesting. I didn't know anything about that port congestion. Hagai, what's your take?
Well, I think in the same way we were all rushing to go buy toilet paper when all of this really hit us in the face. A lot of integrators were stocking up on product because they didn't know what was going to happen, if UPS routes would be shut down. If you remember, New York City was shut down for a while, so we were trying to get product in there and we couldn't. But for the most part, what we've seen is that where our warehouse had been depleted, we just didn't forecast for this type of shift in the networking world and the perception of the homeowner as it relates to networking. And so, you know, there's no finger pointing. It's just the inability to really predict the future as it relates to COVID that caught us off guard and to a short period of time depleted us of product here. But it's a lot of it has been in manufacturing and eventually was able to get into the country. And I'm really speaking about our OEM product versus the generally available Ruckus product that we sell. But luckily, partners like Ruckus, Sophos have been really good when it comes to listening to us and making sure that we have what we need. And so on all fronts, everyone was working to make sure that we stay whole through this period. So at this point, it looks like it's over. We've seen some, even up to like a couple of weeks ago, we ran out of some models, especially on the high-end stuff. Again, this shows you the most expensive APs are now the best sellers. It didn't used to be this way, where people would compromise and want, you know, an older model or a model that's not as advanced, not as powerful. That is shifting as well. We're still selling plenty of those, but clients, homeowners are saying, hey, do it once, do it right, put the latest and greatest in there so I don't have to deal with it for however many years.
And I guess ultimately, the glass half full look is that it's a good thing that demand is still where it is, because Absolutely. The supply chain issue wouldn't be a problem if the demand was shrinking. So, all right, you know, one thing I love about this industry is how optimistic integrators are. I can remember every year we do the CE Pro State of the Industry, and I remember even in the depths of the recession, the guys were predicting growth the following years. And you know, one year they had a 51% drop in revenues, and they had gone into that year and the next year saying, hey, we're going to grow by 7 or 8%. So I love, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit of the integrators. So in that vein, I want to just do a round robin with everybody and talk about some of the most creative things you've seen or heard out there in the space during this pandemic situation. So Hagai, I'll start with you.
Well, as far as sentiment and optimism, a lot of integrators right now are so busy they don't know what to do with themselves. So they're trying to invest their time servicing clients that they know with long relationships, along with new projects. We're trying to support them as best we can. But overall, you know, everybody knows we're not going to be any less connected anytime soon. Tell me when that's coming, right? It's not. We're only going to be more connected. We're going to need to manage how we handle all of those connections. But this is the premise that we're all driving our businesses on. Is we're going to be more connected. Homeowners, especially now, are looking for that control because they can't control the pandemic. They can control how their home functions and how their environment that they now live in for 24 hours a day is functioning. So it goes into lighting, control, of course, networking. And so our integrators are happy. And while every now and then we'll be on phone calls where people are frustrated, our support line, which I apologize to all of you who have been calling and have been waiting, we've been very busy. We've been working overtime, trying to accommodate everybody. And still, we're barely handling the load. And at the same time, this is for a good reason, right? So when you're frustrated because you have so much work and you have so much pressure and so much business coming in, that is a different part of the spectrum for the reality we see out there for so many other verticals that have nothing to do right now. So everybody is happy even when they're frustrated.
JC, what have you heard out there that's creative?
Yeah, we've been really impressed by the kind of upgrade in a box. You know, a lot of the clients that our customers experience are very discerning, but you know, the integrators that took this approach to do the truly remote upgrade, you know, sending the kit to the end user, and because of the great networking equipment they've got, because of the great cloud capability maybe that we're delivering, they were able to perform upgrades remotely without going to the house and proactively doing that. So we've got numerous examples of that happening, and it was really happy to see them embrace that not only to communication from their communications, but also driving that all the way through to the website work, and a lot of integrators jumped on that. The other one that was really neat was giving the systems wellness checks. So they basically, integrators ran campaigns to do, hey, listen, let me come in, let me kind of do a wellness survey of the system that you've got and make some recommendations for what you can do. And the real creative guys out there were not only recommending upgrades, but basically, as opposed to taking that equipment back, pro bono, asking the client where else they might want that system deployed. So they were pitching an upgrade while saying, hey, you've got extra rooms you want me to redeploy this in for free. You know, so that as opposed to just doing upgrades, taking the equipment back, they were looking for redeployment opportunities of that equipment that was coming out of the home. So I thought both of those, the wellness check or the health check on the system was awesome. And I thought about kind of a remote upgrade in the box where the system just showed up from UPS, and they were able to, you know, had the client actually plug it in, and we're able to bring those systems up online.
That reminds me of an integrator I spoke with who was leaping into indoor air quality. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a similar situation. His sales tactic, which I thought was brilliant, is he took a monitor, indoor air quality monitor to the customer's home. He left it for 24 hours. And then he comes back and gets it again, and then shows them a report of their indoor air quality. It's kind of like the cell phone signal booster sale, where you show them how many bars they have and say, you got to get a booster. He was similarly doing the things, and it leaped him into indoor air quality system offerings from a wellness standpoint, which I thought was kind of creative. Yeah. Bill, what have you heard out there that's creative?
Well, Jason, I obviously am pretty new to the CEDIA channel and the integrators. And so one thing I heard actually from this group, which I thought was cool and was going to try to leverage it, was a integrator who had sort of a mobile showroom of their audiovisual products. And since it wasn't socially distanced to have a bunch of people come through that mobile showroom, that they got creative and entrepreneurial and are leveraging that vehicle for families who maybe want to, you can't go to the movie theater, but why not come into this mobile environment that has this great setup and use that for your family entertainment to watch a movie. So I thought that was pretty amazing idea. And I'll just say again, I haven't had I've spent some time, but I'll just say what I'm extremely impressed with the short time I've been a part of this group is again, just the entrepreneurial spirit of the integrators, how well they embed themselves with their customer, and how they're not just executing a job, but they're bringing something to life. They're bringing a collection of wires and screens and circuits, and they're bringing it to life into a home based on how that person wants their home to be. And so very impressed, again, with the short time I've been in with what this group is all about.
Yeah, it reminds me of another integrator that we recently wrote about in CE Pro, who is doing security systems, video surveillance, and networks for temporary pop-up COVID-19 testing stations. And he's done over 200 of them in Rhode Island and New York, which I thought was an interesting way to, again, make lemonade out of lemons. So we've got a few minutes left here. We did get some questions that are coming in from the audience. So let me kind of throw these out and then see who wants to take them, or I'll try and direct them to somebody. So one question was, how have the logistics of using personal protection equipment on projects affected job profitability? Have you heard anything? I have heard similarly from some integrators who were saying that as much as 1 out of every 8 hours they're spending now, which was unanticipated, protecting their customers with either wipe downs or disinfecting or hand sanitization or those sorts of things. And yet they needed to bill for that time. And another integrator who told me an interesting story about having to wait 3 hours at an MDU project to get in the elevator because the local entity had a restriction on a certain number of people in the elevator and contractors on the premises. And he didn't bill for that, or hadn't anticipated that extra 3 hours of time. So Hagai, let me throw that one at you. What are your thoughts in terms of what integrators should be doing when they look at their labor profitability in the era of PPE?
So the attorney answer is it depends, right? Depends on the client, the situation. I think we need to show sensitivity to what the client preferences are. If they want us to come in with PPE, which most people do at this point, absolutely. To some degree, we've coordinated visits at the job site without other vendors being there, separating people. We've had vendors at our home come in and where we would leave and they would come in and do the work. So there's a lot more coordination nowadays, in my mind, than the actual impact on the specific team member that's going out to service the client. I think right now, it's mask and it's gloves, maybe goggles, and you should be good to go. But if there is any type of billable instances, if you will, because of PPE and the preparation to walk into a site or visit a site, I think nowadays clients are more amicable and they're reasonable with their expectations, and also expecting a bill for these things because this is not a normal period where there is no pandemic. Pandemic is kind of mandating the state of our business. So as long as you communicate, you shouldn't have a problem. If you just surprise them with a bill, PPE fee, or an extra hour that the person wasn't there, then I think that could cause some issues.
Okay, unfortunately, we are bumped up against our time. We're right at our time limit here. I want to thank Bill, JC, and Hagai very much for joining me this morning in the keynote conversation. Please note if you have further questions, Hagai And JC, the Savant and Access Networks teams are going to be in their virtual exhibit booths, and I'm sure there'll be staff members, if not these gentlemen, there to be able to answer your questions. And thank you so much to both Savant and Access Networks for sponsoring this morning's keynote. And everybody enjoy the CEDIA Expo Virtual.